How about them Lions? I'm joking.
I will say though that was a very exciting game, especially in the second half. And if you were to ask me, I think David Montgomery is going to be. I think he's going to have a top 10, maybe even potentially a top 5 season fantasy wise, just because of the offense line. That push they started to get in the second half was incredible. And dude, I forget the tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, Taylor or whatever. I saw a stat where it was like 95% of the snaps. I think it was 95%. I saved it on my phone, but I don't feel like looking right now. It was 95% of the time he was lined up as an ineligible receiver. It's just incredible. Like,
yeah.
But then I saw another. Oh, sorry. We'll get into the Pistons stuff. But then I saw this highlight video that said like the way he was lining up was giving them tells whether they were passing or running. So that's probably why they didn't like talk to the refs about it. But whatever. I doubt you see it next week though. But also Mike Tirico and Michael Irvin. I gotta admit, I'm not gonna swear. I want to, but those guys, they can eat a fat one, bro, for what they were saying about the Lions and putting an asterisk next to the win. I always saw it in football, one of the toughest sports. Doesn't matter if there's an injury, it's always next man up. That was always supposed to be the mentality. But now that it's Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, they lose to the Detroit Lions. It's an asterisk. Dude, shut up. Just give the Lions credit for winning.
Yeah, I'm happy they won, and I'm happy for Lions fans that do watch this podcast. But we will get into the Pistons stuff. Just wanted to give the Lions maybe a minute or two of your guys' time. But we have a couple of topics to talk about, and it's off season, you guys. It's September. Like, we don't have that many topics to talk about on the podcast, so might not be too long this week. But we do have more Rico Hines stuff to talk about.
Dude, that was so exciting because we talked about it the first time the Pistons were at Rico Hines, and I think you had mentioned, like, hopefully we get – because we didn't see any Marcus Sasser highlights. We didn't see any Killian. We didn't see anything about James Wiseman. So you were like, man, I hope we get like a part 2. And we finally got a part 2. And, dude, Cade was cooking again. I'm going to turn it over to you, but just real quick, there's one thing I want to say about him. Dude, him, Ivy, and Asar are just going to be such a nasty 3-headed monster at the 1, 2, and 3 spots. Just like the playmaking, the athleticism, the overall IQ and skills and abilities between those 3, it's going to be a nightmare game in and game out for guys this year and just going forward. I loved what I saw from all 3 of those guys, especially Cade, getting some post-ups in, playing a little off the ball. Asar was doing a little bit of playmaking, which I've said on this podcast before, for that next step for Cade Cunningham in this evolution as a player is going to have to play off the ball. And with a guy like Asar, you're going to see him do it a lot this year. But I'm going to turn it over to you. What are some notes that you took on this game, on the Rico Hines?
So I have 4 main notes from the second video they put up, because they put up 2, which I was kind of confused at first. Put up a 30-minute. So I just watched the 18-minute because a lot of people said that it was the same thing. So I wanted to talk about Jaden Ivey a little bit and how aggressive he was against the Lakers in that run. First 3 points, all Jaden Ivey. Cade was looking for Jaden Ivey in transition. Asar was looking for Jaden Ivey in transition. And he just looked really aggressive. And it seemed like every time I looked, he was making a shot. I don't think he missed a shot in the whole run that, Ball's Life posted.
I don't think he did either. I know he got hard fouled one time where Cade still drained the 3, but I think you're right. I don't think he missed the shot. He did have a pull up 3 though too, and his jump shot looked just absolutely clean. Like, it was a thing of beauty. I don't know if he's been reworking it or it's just a thing of confidence, but he looked real good offensively. I didn't really notice him too much defensively though, but Asar I did. I don't know if you took any notes on that.
I did. I think a lot of people joke on Twitter that the reason why Ivy is, shooting the way he is and playing defense the way he is because of the haircut. But I'm not into that type of thing. Like, people's like, man, his aura. Like, I'm not one of those guys on Twitter saying, man, he's got such a strong aura. Like, I saw it's completely off topic, like a top aura list. I'm like, dude, what are we doing?
That's awesome. And he was on it? He was number 1?
No Pistons were on it at all. It was just like a NBA Twitter like whack list. But you had mentioned Asar. I did take some notes on Asar also. His passing. again. Like point Asar, like not only were his passes great, but the reads he was making. Like
Yes.
there were some shots that Cade didn't hit, but they were excellent reads. There's a corner three that he hit Cade right in the shooting pocket. It was an absolutely perfect pass. His passing, I think we saw it on display in the summer league, and we saw it again in these open runs. And defensively, I love that he tried to challenge Russell Westbrook. In my opinion, Westbrook was the best player in these runs. Like he was getting anything he wanted, and Asar took the challenge of trying to guard um, Westbrook, and I absolutely love that for him.
What were you most impressed with, his defense or his playmaking ability? I liked his defense just because he didn't back down at all from anybody. Like he wanted to take the challenge. There was one moment where he was defending Russ and a screen came through, and I think Isaiah wanted to switch with him, but he was just like, no, waved him off. He's like, no, I want this. I want this matchup. And as much as I love the offensive abilities, because the playmaking was sweet. Like it was really cool. Like I said, just to see Cade play off the ball and see that kind of, game from him, which is something I've talked about a ton, but just that defense from him and the confidence still he has defensively. And he did fall for one pump fake though, where Russ got him off the ground. But what were you more impressed with, the defense or the playmaking?
I would say the playmaking, and it was really encouraging to see him and Ivy. There's a play where Ivy was running really hard in transition, and Asar just kind of dumped it off to him for a
Yeah.
really easy basket. There was one basket where all of them touched the ball, but they waved off the basket. I don't know why, but Asar dunked it. I was more impressed with just his offensive game because I know the defense is always going to be there, but I think the next step in his development is going to be that offensive game, and I'm really excited to see where it goes because, like, I think the passing is legit. I think it could be special if he does develop it correctly. And we were talking last week, like, what would be more beneficial, a Bojan or an Asar in the starting lineup? And I said Asar just because of the transition and the passing, and I think I'm going to stick with that. I still think Asar could create more opportunities just, running and in transition for this team long term.
But don't you think, though, once they get into the regular season of the NBA, teams will start to clamp down a little defensively? And when they start getting footage on him, start scouting against him, they'll be able to take things away from his game. I mean, there's still going to be a next step for him to take, but Rico Hines is not the NBA, even though it's full of NBA players.
I think, maybe for the first month, they're not really going to know how to guard him. And like you said, they'll have more footage of him. Not as much, but they'll have some games on him to see like where he likes to go, where he doesn't like to go, where his sweet spots are. But I think with the SAR, he just makes winning plays
Yeah.
for a rookie, and you don't really see that. Like he doesn't really make a whole lot of mistakes. Like I think there was maybe one mistake he had in the entire summer league, and I didn't really see too many mental mistakes during the Rico Hines runs either.
Yeah, he definitely has I don't want to compare it to like a manager in like at the quarterback position, but it's kind of like that where he's going to make the smart play. He's not going to try to gamble too much with the playmaking. He's going to try to make the right reads and hit the right guy at the right time. So, I mean, I love his game, man. Even though I was really hard on him before they drafted him and I was telling the Pistons to stay away. Thank God they would never listen to me unless, we're talking about Team USA. But it's yeah, I don't know. What are some other notes you took down from this Rico Hines footage?
We talked about it. I can't remember when the first run was, maybe a week or two ago. Like Cade and Duran, like the chemistry that they have, it was on full display again. Constantly in the pick and roll. Cade was looking for Duran. Duran had some lob dunks that I absolutely loved. I just kind of love the chemistry that they're building. And I had told you when they were doing, the select stuff, like they're going to come in to the season already having built chemistry, and they did it again in the Rico Hines footage, and like they really didn't get to play last year at all if you think about it. Like Cade played 12 games, Duran was on the bench for the first 10 games of the season, so they really didn't get to see the floor too much together. And the fact that they're building chemistry that fast just encourages me that the pick and roll with Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duran is going to be absolutely lethal.
Were you impressed at all with Isaiah Stewart? There's two things that I'm impressed with, but one thing I was just kind of blown away by. It was his step back jump shot. I don't know if you remember seeing that that was kind of cool. Like he put it on the ground a little bit. Showed I mean, I don't think you're gonna see that a lot from him. We did see it in his first 3 years where he would catch it, pump fake, someone would close out on him, and he would put the ball on the ground. That was always encouraging, but it was always attacking the basket. And this time it was putting the ball on the ground, then taking a step back, and then draining a jumper. It was still inside the arc, but it's still taking another step. Like it's just a confidence boost in his offensive game to know that that is in his bag, hopefully deep, but I'm glad it's still there. But was there anything about Isaiah Stewart you were impressed with?
So that particular play, I saw it and I was like, okay, that's nice. And me scrolling on Twitter, so many people on Twitter like, he's not taking that shot in the season. Better not take that shot this season. God, that was awful. What the hell was he thinking? I was like, you guys, it's open runs. Chill out. But I think Isaiah, was just Isaiah. He wanted to guard Russell Westbrook. He was guarding a lot of guards. He did have a couple goaltends though, like offensive goaltending, where like when Asar was guarding Russell Westbrook, he kind of just grabbed it when it was still bouncing on the rim, and they were like complaining about it. But yeah, he had a couple solid runs when we were talking about it 2 weeks ago, where he was hitting 3-point shots. He just looked like a really active player out there, and I wasn't too surprised that he was bringing energy out there.
I thought he was kind of showing out for the Team USA, because you know how in like FIBA you can grab the ball as long as it's on the rim. There's no goaltending like that. So maybe he was just showing out. Like, hey, you guys need a little bit more rebounding. You need a little bit more defense. I'm available next summer if you need somebody. That's what I thought he was doing. Yeah, the defense was really encouraging because, again, I think it shows that versatility that he has. I mean, you didn't see him. I was hoping I would see some footage of him like on Russell Westbrook. We saw a little bit of it, but it was real brief. There wasn't really much to it, but I wanted to see that versatility more. And I mean, it's again still encouraging that he's comfortable enough when there's a screen being set to switch on a smaller player. And we know about the footwork and we know that he can stay in front of guys. So I was impressed with him. One guy I did not take a note on was Jalen Duren. I thought he was kind of quiet though. I mean, other than a few like getting a couple dump offs and slamming it home, there wasn't really much that he did in the Rico Hines, in my opinion, unless you took some other notes on Jalen Duren.
I did, and I was just really encouraged with the 2-man game with him and Cade. I think that's going to be really crucial this year, especially with Monty Williams being the coach, because he does like the run those type of actions. And I know we were talking about Duren, but I thought of Monty right away because like we talked about like can the Pistons adjust to this 0.5 offense, and I saw that ball moving a lot.
Yeah,
like I saw that ball moving a lot, and like some people told me that there are some coaches at Rico Hines that tell Rico, I want these players playing with each other. Like I want Cade, Ivy, Duren, and Stewart playing with each other. And obviously they want to build that chemistry. And the ball movement was there. Like it wasn't so much, ISO. They looked to pass the ball and move the ball a little bit.
Yeah, I was impressed with that because that ball movement, it kind of looked like that sounded funny coming out of my mouth. That ball movement looked like those five had been playing together for like a year or two at least. They knew where it felt like they knew where, like how you were saying earlier, how Asar was able to get in that passing pocket, that shooting pocket for Cade Cunningham. It felt like all of them knew where they all wanted the ball, their hot spots, where there were places on the floor like, hey, this is where I like to get it. And, everything, it looked good. That chemistry was legit and it's only going to get better. But there was one more note that you had, I think we were talking about, right? One more player that wasn't playing with those five.
Yeah, so our first round draft pick, our second first round draft pick, Marcus Sasser. So this was really weird to me when I'm watching the end of the runs and I see Marcus Sasser on the court, but I was like, I'm trying to see who he's playing with. He's not playing with any Pistons. These are just random guys that they're not on a team like when the Pistons played the Lakers. Those were all Lakers guys, but Marcus Sasser was out there. He was getting by Jaden Ivey. He was giving Cade Cunningham a little bit of fits. I absolutely love that Sasser was just on a team with just random NBA players up there, and they were giving the Pistons team some problems. Like Sasser got by Ivy a couple times. He had that ball on a string, like he crossed them up a little bit. Like I love that for Sasser, and I can just imagine how the practices are going to be this year with Sasser going at Ivy and going at Cade.
It was nice to see that explosive first step on a few plays where he was getting to the rim. Yeah, that was the last game before it went to like Pascal Siakam and Russ Westbrook. I think they played each other in the last game of that 18-minute video. I think that was the last. Yeah, but are you when I was watching that, I was thinking like, dude, Marcus Sasser's totally going to be the sixth man of this team at some point. Like that's just what it screamed to me. Like how you were talking about Monty Williams and some coaches talking to guys like, hey, we want to see these guys on the floor. Part of me thinks like maybe Monty Williams was like, put Marcus Sasser on his own team and just let him run the offense and just let him do his thing against his teammates. Cause there's a specific role I want him to play, and I want to see if he can do it against 5 NBA players. That's what I was thinking. And I think he did an admirable job, man. I really am encouraged by Marcus Sasser. He is low-key one of my favorite players on this team. I love his game from what we saw in Summer League. And I think his role will eventually be six man on this Pistons squad.
I don't know if that was maybe the case why he was just on a team with random NBA players. I just don't know. I'm not gonna like give you guys false information if I don't know anything. But what I will say and what you said is, I want Sasser going against ones. When I mean ones, I mean people that are in the starting lineup, and he was with a bunch of twos. I think his role to me is like an Alec Burks role. I think that's what he's capable of. Now, obviously, when you watch him play, he gives you like Terry Rozier vibes all day. Just the way he can handle the ball, get to his spots, hit those step back threes, and just look like the best player on the court. I was really encouraged with him playing with just random NBA players from other teams. They built chemistry like instantly. The fact that Cade was pointing at the end of the video, I don't know if you saw this, Cade was pointing at Ivy saying, hey, don't forget Sasser over there in the corner. Like, Cade's just like, you know what? I didn't forget about you. Like, and I believe they beat the Pistons in that last game, too. Like, Sasser's team beat the Pistons.
I think it was like a 7-6 finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the Terry Rozier. I get Terry Rozier, Jason Terry, Lou Williams vibes from him. Like, any electric small guard with just like a quick first step. That's what I get from Marcus Sasser. I'm not saying he's going to be a multiple time 6 man of the year winner or anything like that. It's just you can see a real role for him coming off the bench and creating like a little bit of energy and getting something going when like the offense stalls or something, or if you need another guy to create his own shot, you can see that future with Marcus Sasser, and that's all I'm getting at. I'm very excited about his game, and I'm excited to see where he takes it with the Detroit Pistons. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't. It's just I'm just kind of scratching my head. I don't know. Obviously, like James Wiseman played, Marvin Bagley played, Killian Hayes played, which everyone on Twitter is overreacting to a picture of Killian Hayes where he's wearing a black shirt and it looks like he's James Harden with the fat suit. But we're not going to get into that. Maybe we'll get a couple more minutes of some Rico Hine films of those bench players that I'd like to see Isaiah Livers play. The only Isaiah Livers highlight I saw is him walking under the opposing basket and giving the ball to Rico Hines. But I mean, other than that, I kind of want to see where those guys are at, how they developed this summer. But overall, I really enjoy these pickup games. I always do during the dry part of this NBA season, or off season, I should say. But I really don't have any notes. If you have anything else to add, go for it.
No, I think like Stanley Amude was playing in this, right, too, but we're not going to get any highlights from him. The only highlights we saw of Isaiah Liver were in an empty gym with some trainers, and there was like a tube or like a noodle from the back. Fortnite is attacking the basket. And we did get some Killian Hayes highlights. working, on his handle and shooting off the dribble. I forget who posted that, but that got a lot of quote tweets and a lot of likes and shares and everything on Twitter. We won't get into that though, because I have my thoughts on that.
I know,
But,
I saw it. I saw your tweet.
Yeah. Nobody said anything, but yeah, it was out there. If anybody else wants to comment on it, let's talk about real briefly this Cade Cunningham winning a 2K tournament. I have no idea what this is about. I don't know. Did you watch any footage of this? Because I guess someone said you could watch it, I think, on YouTube, and he was like cooking against his opponent in the championship game.
I didn't watch it, but I know they were in Times Square, New York.
Yeah.
And they're playing on a huge screen there. And what I thought was really cool with this whole 2K tournament is Cade was using the Pistons the entire time.
I was just about to ask you.
Yeah, that to me has my respect. And I was just like, that's why Cade's not on social media. He's a 2K junkie. Because he's meeting guys that like are gamers, and he got a really cool 2K trophy chain for beating everybody. But that was it was such a random thing to see, but I had no idea like Cade was that nice on 2K.
Yeah. Do you think no, I'm not even gonna ask you that because that's a stupid question. Because like I think anybody, if we devoted our time to it, we could probably be pretty good at this game. But no, I don't play it as much anymore. Yeah, I was gonna ask you if he played as the Pistons. I probably would have been a little confused if he didn't, but I think it's kind of cool that he was able to win a tournament with the Detroit Pistons, considering the fact that he is the best player, just overall 84 on that team. It's also kind of funny though too that he is using himself in a video game. I also think there's a level of like that's kind of corny, but also that's really cool that you can be in a video game and you don't have to create your own player. I think that's pretty sweet. But also one final bit of 2K news. I saw this on Reddit. You can apparently use the 2011 Detroit Pistons in 2K24.
2011?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm pretty sure I saw this on Reddit. I don't know if it was a joke or not, but that was a team with like Tracy McGrady, Rodney Stuckey, Charlie Villanueva, Ben Gordon. I think Ben Wallace was on the team as well. I'm trying to look this up. But yeah, that was pretty interesting.
That's a sick joke if that's true.
It just shows you how bad the Detroit Pistons have been for years now.
No, it's not their fault. It's just poor management. And
yeah. Oh, I'm not blaming them.
Yeah, like I said, if you're gonna say I can pick any team, I'm not picking the 2011 Detroit Pistons on 2K24.
Yeah,
no, I haven't bought it. I don't know that to be true, but like someone could just be trolling.
No, it says, guys, we can finally relive the glory years. The 2011 Pistons are coming to NBA 2K24. And yeah, you have Rip Hamilton, Rodney Stuckey, Greg Monroe, Moose. Who doesn't want to use him in today's NBA? Tracy McGrady, Charlie Villanueva. That might be, I have terrible eyes. That might be Rasheed Wallace. Might be Ben Wallace on that team. And then Ben Gordon and Jason Maxiell. Dude. And then Jarrell Summers, or Dwan Summers, I mean. He also makes an appearance on that roster. That is crazy.
I went like Men in Black during that era and just forgot that era completely. Like someone sent me a highlight reel of Walter Herman the other day. And I was just like, man, I forgot about him.
Who was, just speaking of that era real quick, what was one player you just had a ton of faith in that you thought was really going to turn out from those bad years?
Oh, Stuckey, 100%. I thought Stuckey was going to be that guy, but they just never used him correctly.
I don't know. I've said this before, and maybe you'll disagree, but I always felt like if Stuckey and Chauncey Billups were in the backcourt, Stuckey's career would have been totally different.
I mean, it depends. Like, I thought Stuckey was a good player, but
so did I.
I think Joe is just trying to strike gold drafting him. But I mean, hey, let's talk about the current Pistons though, because I think the future is a little bit more bright.
It is, but I think he was also trying to find the next Dwayne Wade with Rodney Stuckey, and I get it. Who wouldn't want a 28-point score from college? Real quick before we move on to news, happy birthday to Ben Wallace. I saw that floating around, so that's pretty cool. We only have one little piece of news for you guys tonight, and that is Rex Clayman is going to be the player personnel scout for the Brooklyn Nets. This is according to HoopsHype and Nets Twitter daily. We don't really have to talk about it too much. Just wanted to mention it on the podcast because he is a former Pistons staff member. And it's pretty cool when former coaches and former personnel are going on and doing other things. I know he's still the head coach of the Armenian national team. I believe. I think that's the country he coaches for, which is really cool for Rex. And now he's moving on with the Brooklyn Nets into a different role. I really thought he would. I didn't think he'd be a head coach in the NBA, but before Monty Williams was signed, I thought they were going to give him a chance to be the head coach, maybe for like a year or two, just until they found someone else, because I didn't think they would find a head coach this early, which I'm grateful that they did. But I was rooting for Rex a little bit because wasn't it in the huddles? He was drawing a lot of plays up for the Pistons this last season. Seemed like he was handling a lot of duties.
I don't know. I don't know that to be true, but I know he's been in the NBA for like
a long time,
15, 20 years. He has his dues. So not really surprised that an NBA team picked him up. Him and Kevin Ollie are going to be part of the same team, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty sweet. We can move on. We got some topics here on hand for you guys. And the first one is Cade Cunningham was selected as the 10th player on Bleacher Report's top 10 players in the next 5 years. This was not the article written by Andy Bailey. Andy Bailey wrote another one, which we'll talk about. I love Andy Bailey's content on Twitter, by the way. But let's talk about this. Cade Cunningham. Let me ask you first. Do you think he will be a top 10 NBA player in the next 5 years?
I think if he stays healthy, he has all the tools to be a top 10 player. I think even before the Pistons won the lottery, that was the kind of the consensus talk that Cade on the cusp could be a top 25 player in the NBA. And if he reaches his ceiling and he reaches his potential, he's a top 10 player. He has the frame. He can play both ways, offensive and defensively. I think the 3-point shot is something that, like, if he develops it and he's like a 35, 36% 3-point shooter, then yes, 100%, he could become a top 10 player in the NBA. But I do want to give context to people that aren't watching live. Maybe they're listening they're going to be listening to this on the podcast. I wanted to read the top 10 players at Bleacher Report's, what they think or who they think are going to be top 10 players in the NBA, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. I was actually going to ask you because as you were talking, I was looking up the list and I couldn't pull it up fast enough. So yeah, read those off to me, man.
So it's going to be Luka Doncic number 1, which I think we can both agree. Luka Doncic is one of the best players in the NBA right now.
100%.
Not surprising that he's number 1. Number 2, Nikola Jokic. I honestly think you could kind of, reverse those two. I think you could put Nikola Jokic 1 or Luka 2. I don't have a problem with that. And just won an NBA championship with the Denver Nuggets. In my opinion, the best center in basketball right now. No slight at Joel Embiid. I just think Jokic is better. Number 3 is Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics. This is where I'm kind of like, I like Tatum, but I would possibly have Giannis 3. That's just me.
Oof.
I still think Giannis to me he's gonna be great in the next 5 years. But they had Tatum 3 on their list. Giannis was 4, which I think we can both agree one of the best forwards in basketball.
All time.
He's like literally impossible to stop. It's like having a jacked up, juiced on steroids wide receiver just come at you. Like, you're not stopping that. I'm sorry, you're just not.
It's like if you gave Shaq the dribble ability to go downhill 10 to 15 times a game. It's just unreal. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just unreal.
Yeah. Number 5, I think there's a lot of talk on social media that he's rated this high, and that is Victor Wembanyama.
Ooh.
So Bleacher Report believes that Victor Wembanyama will be a top 5 player in the next 5 years in the NBA. If he hits his ceiling, hits his potential, I think he'll be top 10, but I don't think he'll be top 5.
Man, I think I got to see more for him because we only got 2 summer league games and it was complete opposites.
Yeah.
in those games. Like the first game, he looked lost. Second game, I think he had 26 points. I think he had double-digit rebounds, maybe 12. I don't know why I'm remembering 12. Handful of blocks. Showed off the range defensively in that game. But that first game, he looked completely lost. And
Yeah.
I think if you give him a solid point guard to set him up, he's going to be perfectly fine. I just think if you're saying, hey, go be Kevin Durant for us, because I think some people have talked about him kind of being in that role. I think he'll struggle early on, but it's a lot of hype for the guy, man. It's a lot of hype to live up to of being a top 5 player in the next 5 years. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I think he could reach those heights if the defense stays true. Because if he can be that good defensively in the NBA, yeah, I mean, he could average 20 points in the NBA, and that's it. He doesn't have to be a top scorer to reach those heights. But if he can be like a 20-point scorer, but then be that good defensively, yeah, he could be a top 5 player in the NBA.
So number 6 is, to me, I think he's kind of underrated, and I think he's going to be the next great shooting guard of this era, and that's Anthony Edwards.
Ooh.
They have him 6. They think Wembanyama is going to be a better player than him, which I don't know, man. I really find that hard to believe because to me, Anthony Edwards is box office. I think his play speaks for itself. He's a media darling. Like, there's always a soundbite with Anthony Edwards, but just his play style to me, I was kind of having a debate this week because one of my friends is like, Anthony Edwards, this generation's Dwayne Wade.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, but I think they're on the same tier in terms of the type of players that they are. Because I think Anthony Edwards could get you 30 points if you need 30 points. Same with Dwayne Wade.
I think he's about to take another step too this year. I would,
yeah.
It might sound crazy, but I would probably move Anthony Edwards into, I would be okay with him if they put him in number 3 instead of Jason Tatum. I think Anthony Edwards is going to be that good for the Timberwolves, man. Like, forget that talk about him going to another team. I think he's on the cusp of being right there. I think he's one of these dudes that could legit be one of the faces of the NBA. He's that good of a player, and he has so much confidence in. I really think he's going to take that next step of being an elite 2-way player in the NBA. Like, I'm a huge Anthony Edwards fan.
Me too. I think he's going to be one of those guys that is going to be a multi-time All-Star. He's going to be the face of the league. In my opinion, one of the faces once LeBron does retire, just because he's just a soundbite waiting to happen. Like when you see the interviews, like he's like that ass serious. Like he's one of the funniest guys, in my opinion, in the NBA. Like I would love to have an Anthony Edwards podcast because it would be wild. Number 7 is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Okay.
Now, I think SGA and Anthony Edwards and Jason Tatum are all kind of in a similar tier. I will argue, though, that SGA did carry his team to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Last year. And I think he has another step in development. I don't think he's done developing. Now, he's a little bit older. Bleacher Report thinks he'll be a top 10 player in the next 5 seasons, and I happen to agree with them. I think he will be a top 10 player in the NBA within the next 5 years, but I kind of feel like 7's a little bit low for him.
Do you think he should be higher?
I like Victor Wembanyama, but I haven't seen enough to put him in a top 10 list.
I mean, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 31, 5, and we'll just round up to 6. So we'll say 31, 5, and 6 with 2 steals and a block. Hell of a stat line. I think he made all NBA first team this past year. I just don't see him duplicating that type of season again going into next year. Where do you think he takes the next step in his game? Like, do you think he, as a scorer, as a defensive player, as a playmaker? And I don't know. I mean, I get this weird feeling that if Oklahoma City had to eventually choose between SGA and Josh Giddey, they'd probably end up choosing Josh Giddey because 6'8". He's a great playmaker. Fantastic second season. And I'm not throwing shade at Shy. Like, I think he's a fantastic player. I just think 31, 5, 6, 2, and 1 is also shooting 51% from the field, 35% from three, 91% from the line. He was not close to 90% in any of his other seasons. I think this might be his absolute, we might have just witnessed his best season ever in the NBA. I don't know how he duplicates it stats wise. I mean, I don't know what next step he could take. I don't watch him a ton, but I don't know. Like, I think he could still be a top 10 player 5 years from now, but I don't know. I think 7 might be kind of high.
I think he should be at least in the top 5 just from that season that he had, because I think he can duplicate it, because the way he plays and the way he gets to his spot, it's just he does it with just like no effort. And it's no shot at him when I say that. It's just he makes it look so damn easy.
Yeah.
And the defenses can't adjust to it, and he still gets his 30. And he's still shooting damn near 50, 40, 90 for the year, like that's impressive to me. I think his 3-point shot could evolve into a 40% 3-point shooter. I think defensively he has all the tools to become a better defender. I've always been really high on him as a player since he did get drafted. But I just have a problem with Victor Wembanyama being top 5 already. But we'll get to number 8, because this one, to me, it's in the same category as Victor Wembanyama, and that's Scoot Henderson at number 8.
Dude, they show a lot. For good reason, but I always have a complaint about super athletic small guards. They always show you something for like 3 seasons, and then it seems like their peaks are so short compared to other guys. And I'm not saying all short guards. I'm just saying short, top of elite, top athletic point guards. Those short guards, they always seem like they have like a 3-4 year window in the NBA where they look godlike. And then either an injury happens or the NBA kind of catches up to them. But Scoot Henderson at number 8, that's interesting.
I just think the Scoot hype, I could understand it. Explosive, bouncy point guard. But he's rated above Devin Booker, who's at 9. We'll talk about it in a little bit. And Cade Cunningham, who's at 10, which we'll talk about after, Devin Booker. But I personally would take Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson off this list. I don't know if they're going to be top 10 NBA players. I mean, Joel Embiid's not on this list. Ja Morant's not on this list. Zion's not on this list, which I don't know what's going to happen with Zion. I don't know if he'll be a top 10 player. I think if he got out of New Orleans, he might, but that's a whole nother topic for a different day. But I just think Scoot and Wemby shouldn't be on this list because they haven't played basketball yet. Like, they haven't played real NBA minutes. They played summer league. And no shot at summer league minute. No shot at playing in the summer league, but like they haven't played like real NBA competition yet.
And I think being named a top 10 player in the NBA is such a special honor that we tend to overlook because basketball, like, there's so many opinions going around and there's so many awesome players that, like you were saying, Ja Morant, Zion Williamson. I don't agree with you on Joel Embiid because he is 28 years old and I just don't see I see a pretty big drop off in his game in the next 5 years. As a 7'1" or whatever, 280-pound center, it's just crazy. I just don't see him being a top 10 player then. But yeah, to add Scoot, especially Scoot. But I mean, if you had to gamble on Victor and Scoot as a top 10 player, who would you put your money on being a top 10 player in the next 5 years out of those two?
I'll probably Scoot, just because the point guard position is such a prime position. And I think what Portland has that San Antonio doesn't is they have a core that he could build with. Like having a Shadon Sharp in the backcourt with him, having an Anthony Simons over there, still having Jeremy Grant. Like, I think he would benefit more with the players that are around him. Nothing against San Antonio, but their second best player is Keldon Johnson,
Well,
right?
yeah, or Devin Vassell, I mean, you could probably throw him in there too when he's healthy. I love Keldon Johnson. But when's the last time we saw a 6'2" guard as one of the top 10 players in the NBA?
Like Derrick Rose.
Is he? I don't even know how tall he is.
I think
I mean,
Derrick Rose is 6'3" or something like that. But
6'3". So, but that's my point. Like, you don't see that you don't see it that often where there's a 6'3", 6'2" guard that's one of the top 10 players in the NBA. I mean, Kyrie Irving was really good, and Steph Curry, but Steph Curry's an anomaly just because he's an incredible shooter. But we're not even talking like the Curry and the Steph Curry types. We're talking those ultra athletic, top 1% athletes probably on the planet, having to play basketball as the point guard. We don't see those guys very often as one of the top 10 players in the NBA. So I think it's very premature to put Scoot Henderson in the top 10, even 5 years from now, even though he would be my bet to win Rookie of the Year this year. I just don't see him. I just don't see how he could become a top 10 player in the NBA. I mean, because out of everybody you named on this list, it feels like his game would be the most limited and the most dependent on his athleticism.
See, like when you asked me who do I think would be a top 10 player, I took into account the team, because the reason why I did that is because when you look at the Spurs and the way they're built right now, for Victor to be a top 10 player, he's going to have to average at least 25, get 10 blocks and maybe 10 rebounds, and like maybe 2 to 3 blocks a game. I think with Scoot, it's going to be easier for him because he already has players there that he can benefit from to get his stats up even higher. And to your point, I think if you look at John Morant, I think John Morant's right on the cusp of being a top 10 player. I think Kyrie Irving at his peak was a top 10 player. And I think he has the potential, to get back into that if he actually plays a full season. He has a bunch of off the court stuff that I'm not even going to get into because I don't even understand it. And I'm not going to speak on it. But I think Steph Curry, he should be on this list as well, but I don't know how his game is going to age over the next 5 seasons because he is getting up there in age. But I think those are lists of point guards that you could look at and say, yeah, they're top 10 players. I mean, you can even go back because I know you're a history buff. I mean, Stephon Marbury, Baron Davis. I mean, you can go down the list of bouncy, athletic point guards, and they're top 10 players. And I think Scoot is kind of cut from the same cloth in terms of just an athletic point guard that's going to get a lot of points, a lot of media attention. He's going to be a human highlight reel, in my opinion. But my only thing is the question you asked me, Scoot or Vic, I think Scoot has a better chance because the team that he has currently is, kind of pre-built in terms of like what San Antonio has. San Antonio has one of the worst rosters in the NBA outside of, Victor Wembanyama. It's just a bunch of guys on short-term deals.
Yeah, I mean, I still like some of those guys. I like Zach Collins. I like Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell. I like those guys. And I think they're going to, I mean, even Jones, like I was just listening to a podcast and I'm so confused. I don't even remember if I don't even think it's Tyus Jones. That's the San Antonio point guard, but I think they said his brother was the point guard for the San Antonio Spurs. But either way, I think they don't have the best roster around Victor Wembanyama, but I think if I had to gamble on the two of them, I think he has a better shot than Scoot just because of the defensive chops. Like, he's going to be so good defensively. I mean, offensively, I think there's going to be a steep learning curve, but there was that block it is summer league, but he had that block on Brandon Miller where they're like, 34 feet away from the basket, and Brandon Miller decides to pull up, and Victor Wembanyama still blocks his shot. It was incredible where I'm like, the type of range this guy has defensively where he can block a shot 30 feet away from the basket. Like, it's like an athletic Yao Ming. It's crazy. Like, I don't know if anybody can get a shot over that guy. And I think if he reaches his ceiling defensively, and he gives you 20 and 10, he's easily a top 10 player in the NBA. And I think he's probably going to surpass that. I just think there's going to be a steep learning curve for Victor Wembanyama. And also, there's a part of me too that says, I don't know what player he is, because what I talked about earlier on the podcast, we saw 2 different games from him in summer league. But I would like to think the second game is closer to who he is than the first game.
Yeah, I mean, we can. Like, I could debate Scoot and Vic all day. I did it a lot this past year. I was telling you, those are the two guys that you want in this draft class, 2 of the best talents.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about a Michigan native next in Bleacher Report's top 10 list. So they had Devin Booker number 9. I think Devin Booker will still be a top player in the NBA. I thought this past season was his best season he's had in quite a long time. And the playoffs that he had, if you go look up at his playoff numbers from this past season, they're insane, man. Like the shooting splits that he had, felt like he just had his sliders up all the way in 2K. He did not miss a shot, but they did have Devin Booker at number 9. I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, this past playoffs, he averaged 34 a game, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, while shooting 59% from the field, 51% from 3 on 6 attempts, and then 87% from the free throw line, which kind of seems down compared to the field goal and the 3-point percentage. In the regular season, I was unaware of him not being named an all-star despite averaging 28, 5, and 6 with 1 steal, while shooting 49%, 35, and 86% from the line. I was surprised. And he's only 2 years older than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is ranked 2 spots ahead of him. I would actually take Devin Booker over Shai going forward, just because since his second year in the league, he's averaged 22 or more points per game. And he's been the face of a team. He's had playoff success. He's a fantastic playmaker. I think defensively, Shai might have him a little bit. I'd give Shai the edge defensively, just because I don't think Devin Booker's been on a good enough team yet. And the past 3 seasons have been a little different, where he's had to focus so much on offense. We haven't been able to see that side of the ball. But now with Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and, the team they have over there, I think we'll see a different engaged Devin Booker on the defensive side. But for the next 5 seasons, I would take him over Shai. I mean, he's only 26 years old. That's absurd to me, because seems like he's been playing for such a long time. And
yeah, like that's kind of alarming to me, because I feel like that draft, like the Stanley Johnson draft, feels like such a long time ago.
It was 2015. That's crazy.
Yeah, Devin Booker. I feel like Devin Booker should be 30, but he's not.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But I think him at 9, like, yeah, you could swap him in SGA. I don't think I would have a problem with that. I'm just kind of wondering how he's going to benefit from all these all-stars around him. Now, he did. I feel like his game got a lot better when Chris Paul went to Phoenix. And when Monty Williams got there, I felt like he kind of learned how to play winning basketball, because he always put up numbers in Phoenix. But before, Monty and Chris Paul got there, like, the Phoenix Suns weren't really winning a whole lot of games. But I think 9 is a fair ranking for him. But I want to get to Cade, because I feel like that's why people are here. So Cade was ranked 10th. And I was surprised by this personally. I really was. I was really shocked to see that Bleacher Report believes that Cade Cunningham could be a top 10 NBA player. Because we've talked about it before. Like, the Pistons don't really get a whole lot of national love.
They don't.
They don't. But I told you last week, you're going to see a lot of media members start glazing Cade Cunningham. It's going to be Cade this, Cade that, Cade this. And I know I said glazing, pause. All you guys in the chat, I know you guys are immature. But I think him being in this list made me happy as a Piston fan. I don't care that he's 10th. I'm just happy that he made a top 10 list, because Bleacher Report thinks he's that dude.
I mean, I'm happy, but I'm also curious why so many bloggers are walking their takes back about Cade Cunningham, because just a few months ago, there were a lot of accounts that were talking about Cade Cunningham in not the most positive light.
I
So
know.
I'm kind of surprised. And I like to think that this is just from his Team USA select experience and how he
Mhm.
did against Team USA. And now how he played against them even looks crazier because, they just lost and they Team USA medaled. I could be wrong, but I think they lost I think they lost their last two games. Again, could be wrong about that. But you're right, to see him on a list where there are other people outside of us that think he can be a top 10 player in the NBA is pretty crazy. And it just shows the level of respect he's finally getting, and I think he actually deserves it. Even though he only played 12 games last year, we knew, a lot of Pistons fans knew what we were watching in Detroit before everybody else. We were seeing the groundwork being laid for a potential, I think we had said it, a potential top 10, top 15 player in the NBA. And I don't know, I'm glad the rest of the basketball world is starting to catch up to it.
Yeah, me too. I was just happy that he made the list. I know in the beginning of this we had talked about um, do we believe he could be a top 10 player? And I told you he has all the tools, all the physical tools, offensively and defensively. It's just putting it all together and having healthy campaigns. Trying to play at least 70 games a season. I don't need him to play a full 82. I don't think we're expecting him to play a full 82. But if he does, that's great. But if he can put game like seasons together where he's playing anywhere from like I don't know 65 to 72 games, I think he has all the makings of a top 10 player in the NBA over the next 5 seasons.
Same, same. It's going to be, we're witnessing something, man. We are truly, it feels so great too, to finally, after all these years, have a draft pick. I know he was number one and he was pretty much the consensus number one pick that year, but to have him in Detroit, to be a fan of this team, and to watch him develop as a player, it's going to be a lot of fun and it's truly special. It is, man. I am so excited for Cade Cunningham and what he's about to do in, what he's about to do in Detroit. It's just going to be, it's going to be truly special.
It really is, man. And like I said, we just did like I believe this was like a 20-minute segment on Bleacher Report's top 10 list, but we're not done talking about Cade Cunningham
Yeah.
because we have a even better topic, which I feel like so many people when they hear this topic of what we're talking about, they're going to laugh because this list, when I saw it, dude, I was laughing. I was thinking about Rookie of the Year and how they gave it to Scotty Barnes.
Yep.
I was thinking of all the people saying how, oh, well, Evan Mobley's better than Cade Cunningham. So, Bleacher Report came out with the list, and it was ranking the top 5 players out of the 2021 NBA draft class. Guess who was number fucking 1? Cade Cunningham.
It was incredible too. I think this is the article that was written by Andy Bailey. And Andy Bailey, he knows basketball, man. Former college player. I think he just highlights as a Bleacher Report writer, and he puts out great content. And yeah, he has been a Cade Cunningham supporter for a while now. So I'm really not surprised. But this list, dude, Evan Mobley, number 2, Josh Giddey, number 3, Franz Wagner, number 4, and then Scotty Barnes, number 5. Jalen Green, not on the list, which I know Houston fans hate. But, dude, I mean, it's hard for me to really say anything. The dude hit the nail on the head. And I think Cade Cunningham does have the highest potential because, no knock to the other players, he really does have a two-way game. He can get it done offensively. And again, he's probably not going to be a defensive player of the year candidate, but he is still going to be a solid defender in the NBA. He can stay in front of other guards. Some other accounts have highlighted this. He rarely gets beat. He's not going to get into foul trouble defensively. He's just a smart player. And again, I'm glad he's being acknowledged as the guy with the highest potential from his class finally, because there were other accounts that had him out of the top 5, that had him lower. I mean, I saw an account that was saying Austin Reeves, no offense to him, was a better player than Cade Cunningham. And blows my mind, man. Blows my mind.
That's Laker bias 101, man. I saw a post. Well, we'll get back to this top 5 in a minute. Like, Austin Reeves is the best undrafted player. I was like, hold on.
Did we forget about Ben Wallace? He's in the Hall of Fame. Are you kidding me? It's unreal.
Like, come on. So I think, Cade being number 1 in this list, absolutely love that. Makes the Rookie of the Year validation.
Yep.
For Pistons fans, like, yeah, we got the best player. We already knew that. To Evan Mobley, I don't really have a problem with that. I think he's a player that has the potential to be a defensive player of the year. He has all the tools to be a great defensive anchor. Josh Giddey, number 3. This is what I'll say. OKC, to me, when they drafted him, when I was at a draft party, there were so many people saying, who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And that he's top 3 in this list from Bleacher Report. And he's one of the better players out of his draft class. Seems like every time I look, the guy's flirting with a triple-double. He just has a really sound basketball game. Franz Wagner, who I know a lot of people in the state of Michigan are familiar with, top 4. I think he has a really great game. I think him and Paolo really fit well next to each other. And I have no problems with him being a top 4 player in this list, because I think he does play on both ends of the court. Scotty Barnes, number 5. To me, I think defensively, we know what's there with him. We know that he can switch on anything. He's just a nightmare to go up against defensively. He's a good passer, but I think what limits him right now is the shooting and his inability to hit jump shots consistently. But if he was more of a consistent player, I'm sorry, dude, he would be number 2 behind Cade Cunningham.
I was going to say,
yeah. If he had a consistent jump shot, he would be right there with Cade Cunningham.
And that's why you put him in the top 5, because if he can get that jump shot, that is the biggest question mark of his game right now, Scotty Barnes, just that jump shot. I would actually move Franz Wagner a little bit higher based on what we've seen. I would not have complained if they put him at number 2, because he is a very good offensive player. He's a very good defensive player. You're looking at a guy that he looks like he could defend positions 1 through 4 right now in the NBA, because he's 6'10". He has great timing. He has quick hands. He knows how to stay in front of guys. He's like, I seen the Hedo Turkoglu comparisons, and I get that offensively, but I think he's a step above. Just I think he's a little more athletic than Hedo, and Hedo was a fantastic player, but I think Franz is one of these guys that could get you 23, 7, 5 with a steal or 2 a game and a block while shooting great percentages. He seems like he's going to be a legit 2-way player in the NBA. And I think he's shown more of a complete game than Evan Mobley right now. I get why you have Evan Mobley at number 2, because he could be a potential defensive player of the year winner, not just a candidate, but he hasn't really shown much offensively. And I don't think he's ever going to be that offensive franchise player you want from a top 3 pick, which is what was he number 3 or was he number 4? I can't believe I'm forgetting that. I think he was
Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
He was 3 behind Jalen Green.
And then Scotty Barnes was number 4. That's right. Yeah. I think there's still just a little bit of a question mark from him offensively. Like, he's not a guy. I feel like the rest of these guys, like, Cade, Giddey, and Franz right now, you can give them a ball and they can go out and get you a bucket. And I feel like with Evan Mobley and Scotty Barnes, that's the thing that's missing from their games. But it's still a good list. I mean, it's really hard to argue with the order that they're in too.
Yeah, I just love that Cade was 1 and Scotty was 5.
Yeah.
That just kind of validates it. The rookie of the year stuff was kind of like, I don't know. Like, I thought Evan Mobley was going to win it for the longest time because that was kind of like the narrative. Like, the media was just like, Evan Mobley this, Evan Mobley that. And then, like, over like the last month of the season, it's like, oh no, we like Scotty Barnes now. It's just like, okay, that's kind of weird.
But I mean, because, Scotty Barnes is playing in a role with Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam. And yeah, that's why he's rookie of the year. You're like, doesn't make any sense. Like, because I mean, if he was in a different role on any other team, he would. I mean, I think he shot really great percentages too that season. But again, he was out of all of these guys, he was probably on the best team that year. Out of the guys drafted in the top 4, he had the best team he was going to.
Yeah, good situation.
Yep. It's hard to argue. Is there any other player you would put on this list, though?
I feel like you could put Jalen Green on this list just for the type of scorer that I think he's going to be. But when I look at this list, every guy on this list can impact the game, and they don't need to score the basketball to impact the game. I think Jalen Green, to me, he's easily going to be a 30-point per game scorer in his career. I think he has all the tools to do that, but I think on the defensive end, that's where he needs to get better. And I think even a Rockets fan will tell you that. I think he's a good passer. He can score at all 3 levels. It's just defensively, he's not as good as a defender as a Cade, as a Franz, as a Scotty Barnes. And I think that's why he was just an honorable mention and he wasn't on the list.
Yeah, he's more one-dimensional compared to the other guys. He's more of an offensive player than a two-way player right now in his career. But I don't know. Like, I mean, there's something to be said about a guy that could go out and get you 25 or 30. We'll see if he does it. But yeah, Jalen Green. I'm looking at the list right now, and I'm honestly really shocked they didn't throw like Trey Murphy on this list, because I feel like that would have been a bleacher because for some reason, I feel like they love the New Orleans Hornets. They're like, yeah, Trey Murphy has the potential, I mean, I wouldn't have been pissed, but I'm glad that they stuck with guys that were drafted in the top 10. I mean, Sengun, I wouldn't have complained about either because he's such a gifted offensive player, man. It's unreal. But yeah, that's pretty much the other two. Those are probably the only 3 names I think you could have like potentially thrown on the list and people wouldn't have complained as much. But it is nice to see Cade Cunningham coming in at number 1 because again, we all knew what we were watching in Detroit. We all knew it.
Yeah. I know that there are some other names that Bravo in the chat is throwing out there. He thinks Davion Mitchell could have been in the top 5, which I think Davion Mitchell, great player, Bravo, but I don't know if he's done enough to get that top 5 recognition yet. He's a hell of a player, don't get me wrong. I think he can play both ends, and he plays so much like Donovan Mitchell. It's like almost like a clone. But he's a great player. I know Bravo said Quentin Grimes too. I don't know if I'd put Quentin Grimes in my top 5. Great player again, but I don't know.
The only problem with Davion Mitchell, he went from 28 minutes per game to 18 in his second year. He did play 80 games, but only had 9 starts, 19 the previous season. And he went from 12 points per game to 5 or 6, if you want to round up. And his assist numbers dropped. That's because of his field goal, his efficiency went up. But I don't know. He just feels like he's more of a defensive specialist than anything else. Like, a disruptor, a guy that's going to be able to play on the ball, kind of like a Pat Bev almost. Yeah. But I do love Davion Mitchell's game too. But I don't think I wouldn't have put him in my top 5 for highest ceilings.
Yeah, I think his numbers went down because of the Sabonis trade and just the usage that they had with Fox and Sabonis in the starting lineup. Not to say that, Davion just couldn't put numbers up if they gave him more minutes. Yeah. I think he could. I mean, he was even in the Rico Hines runs, busting people's ass. Like he was out there just scoring because the Kings were out there too. But I was always really high on him coming out of the draft. But I think for this list for, top 5 for the 2021 draft, I think they got it right.
I still can't believe that Luka Garza went 52 with Charles Bassey still on the board. Blows my mind. I'm kidding.
Oh man.
I'm kidding.
Dude, like I don't want to get into the Luka Garza slander because he has got a hive and they are not nice.
No, I
I
know.
don't I don't want smoke with Luka Garza's family, his father. I don't want smoke with any of his fans because I'm telling you, man, they wrote me a damn near thesis with what you said last year about Luka Garza.
Oh, for real? You never shared this with me? Oh
I
man.
couldn't screenshot it. It was too damn long.
Dude, I would have figured it out. You just did multiple ones. I actually had a friend that was so high on Luka Garza. I thought I always thought there was a role for him in the NBA as just like a big body, but there's no Shaq anymore. You know, I mean, he'll probably always have a spot on an NBA roster because I feel like big men are really starting to come back in the NBA and you're going to need multiple, even if they aren't really built for today's NBA. But I had a friend that he would have given Luka Garza the Isaiah Stewart contract after his first year. He felt like Luka Garza deserved a spot on the team over Isaiah Stewart, which just still to this day blows my mind. And it's no slander to Garza in their hive. It's just
yeah. I guess I don't want any smoke, but we'll get to our last topic of the show, and then we'll get into the Q&A. And now
we got to predict some stats, but that's coming up after this.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's all good. Isaiah Thomas. Well, no, this is Steph Curry, but it does involve Isaiah Thomas. Steph Curry said that every guard is behind him, but he said, what of the all-time great guards, who's behind him? And he actually said Isaiah Thomas is behind him. Do you agree with Steph Curry that Isaiah Thomas is behind him in the all-time point guard rankings?
So, like, I personally don't like the GOAT talks.
Okay.
Because I was born in the 90s and I wasn't alive when Magic Johnson or Isaiah Thomas was playing. I'll get that out there right now. Because I know we do have some older listeners that do watch this show, and they'll tell me how great Isaiah Thomas was and how great Magic Johnson was. And like, I'll take them at face value and believe them because I wasn't alive. Like, all I can really watch is YouTube highlights. But I think my top three guards, and this might come off a little bit biased, I still think it's Magic 1, Isaiah 2, and Steph 3. And why I will say Steph 3 is because when I look at Steph Curry's career, I think 2 of those rings are because of Kevin Durant, not because of Steph Curry. And the type of players that he's played with, very fortunate to get coached up by Mark Jackson, have one of the better shooting guards in Klay Thompson in the entire NBA, one of the best catch and shoot guys that I've seen probably since like Rip Hamilton and Reggie Miller. Just absolutely can go nuclear on you at any time. And you got a Swiss Army knife and Draymond Green, who, you know, some older people that I talked to, I was like, that's what Scottie Pippen would be like if he didn't shoot. Like, honestly, like, Golden State built such a dynasty, and I think Steph really benefited from it. But I can't be mad at him for saying, I think I'm better than Isaiah Thomas. I think I'm the second greatest point guard of all time. I can't be mad at that. Like, because he's got 4 championships during, you know, his era when LeBron James is in his era also. I mean, he stopped LeBron from getting multiple championships in Golden State. But me personally, I still have Isaiah second. I don't have any issues with him saying that he believes that Isaiah Thomas is behind him in the, you know, the GOAT talk for, you know, greatest of all time for point guards. But I think my bias as a Piston fan, I still have Isaiah too.
See, I have Isaiah Thomas number 3. I have Steph Curry number 2. I would, if I was constructing a 5-man roster to save the universe, this incredible conversation, Steph Curry would be in my starting lineup. He would be my point guard just because of the elite shooting. He was a unanimous MVP. His resume is incredible. I don't know what it would be like for them to play one-on-one or anything like that. It would probably be a good game. It would probably never end. But man, I have to give it to Steph Curry, man. His career is just unbelievable. Like, even players that you mentioned that he played with. I mean, Isaiah Thomas had an incredible cast of players around him too. Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer, Joe Dumars, Mark Aguirre, Adrian Dantley. Like he had a great cast of players. John Sally, just a great group of guys around him, and one of the greatest coaches of all time, in Chuck Daly. Like, just an incredible cast of people. And I'm not. If you want to have Isaiah Thomas ahead of Steph Curry, that's on you. But I would take Steph Curry in an all-time draft. I'm taking Steph Curry. I don't think Isaiah Thomas, if we're just talking strictly point guards, you're doing an all-time draft, I don't think he gets past 3, but I wouldn't be, and I especially don't think he gets past number 4. But man, it would be crazy to see Steph Curry on the board and be like, yeah, I'm going to go take Isaiah Thomas. And it's just because when I go back and I watch old highlights of Isaiah Thomas, I mean, obviously you see a great player. I was not alive when he was tearing up the NBA. I was born in 1990. When the Pistons won their last championship in the Bad Boys era. I just don't see one elite skill from him other than a great mid-range and being able to dribble the hell out of the ball. It's with Steph Curry. Yeah, like I see those elite skills. Like with Steph Curry, you see the shooting. He's the greatest shooter ever. Like when you have greatest ever in the title of your basketball playing career, you're one or two of the greatest players at your position, in my opinion. And Steph Curry, he takes the cake for me, man.
Yeah, I see. Here's the thing where I will defend Isaiah. Isaiah went to a team that was one of the worst teams in basketball, and he had to learn how to win. Where I feel like Steph Curry had to do it a little bit too, but Isaiah had to beat arguably one of the greatest teams of all time in the Boston Celtics that were stacked, that were a title contender each year. Not only did he get past the Celtics, he got past the Lakers, Magic Johnson's Lakers. That team was stacked. And he held Jordan down for a good 3 to 4 years. And I think when you talk basketball, everyone says Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. Now, some people say LeBron, but for this argument's sake, we'll say Jordan is. I don't think there's a single player when you look that he beat Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson to win an NBA championship. Dude, that's tough. Like, you look at some of the teams that Steph has beaten. I mean, it's just LeBron James's teams, and I believe, I can't remember who his last championship was against. I want to say it was the Suns or the Bucks. I think it was the Suns, if memory does serve. But I feel like he's just kind of benefited from where the NBA is now. Like, the NBA now is not as physical as it was back in the 80s. Not to say that Steph Curry couldn't play in Isaiah's generation. I think he could. But I think it's just more biased for me as a Pistons fan. Like, listening to interviews, going back and watching, like, Isaiah Thomas could play in this generation right now.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
He had the handles. He had the shot. I think he's up there to me. I think top 5 handles of all time. I think he's in the same conversation with like Kyrie Irving and those guys. I think he's that special, but that's just my Pistons bias. I know Isaiah has 2 championships, and some people say, well, Curry has 4, Isaiah has 2, so that makes him better. There's people that are really small-minded like that, but like, again, I don't have a problem with Steph Curry believing he's the second best point guard of all time, right behind Magic Johnson. I just don't. But like I said, this debate to me, I think, is really tiresome. I think Steph Curry did change the game the way we watch it now, and the way you see little kids in the gym. Everyone's trying to be Steph Curry. Everyone's trying to shoot 35 3-point shots. I think he did revolutionize the game, and I think he's an all-time great. It's just maybe me as a Piston fan, I feel like Isaiah is still a top 2 point guard of all time.
I mean, I don't think it's a knock to say he's number 3, but it's just like when I look at players too, I look at like, okay, well, how versatile are they? Like if I were to put him in a starting lineup again to save the universe, like what kind of special elite skills do they have and how do they fit with other players? In Steph Curry, I feel like it's just easier to put him in that. And I think that's what you do with elite players where you're like, all right, man, he's an elite shooter. I could play him off the ball. I don't have to run everything through him. And you can't, I don't feel like you can do that with Isaiah Thomas. I feel like with Isaiah Thomas specifically, you would have to say, you're my point guard, and I'm going to have to build the team around you and your skill set. Even though, dude, his playmaking was godlike. I mean, he did average 21 and 14 in his fourth year in the NBA, which is just unreal. I mean, he's a hell of a point guard, man. It's just, I got to take Steph Curry over him, man. Like, I would take Steph Curry over Isaiah Thomas. And that's tough to say, but because I do love Isaiah Thomas, but it mainly comes down to the fact that I am a Pistons fan. I have watched a lot of his highlights. I've gone back and actually watched some moments of those championship games. I haven't watched them all the way through, but when I watch him, I'm obviously watching a great player. But when I watch Steph Curry, I feel like I'm watching a guy he's like a savant at basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like he was like born to play this game, born to shoot the ball. And I just think that puts you on another tier. I mean, I really wouldn't even complain if someone said they would take Steph Curry over Magic Johnson. I'd be like, dude, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like this dude is the greatest shooter ever when it comes to basketball. He's the first unanimous MVP. He is just incredible on the offensive game. Any shot, there's like no place where you're safe defending him on the floor because even if he's taking a 37-foot shot, you're like, damn, there's a good chance that's going to go in. That's how good of a shooter he is. And you can't say that really for any other player. Like he's that special. And yeah, maybe he just looks good in this era, but damn, he looks real good in this era.
Yeah, like I said, I'll just stop the debate because I think, to be fair to Steph Curry, I was not born during the bad boy era. I'm not going to pretend that I watched their championships because I didn't. I have watched some games back. It just seemed like Isaiah was on another level, but that's where I'll kind of end it. And I think, both of us weren't born. Oh, you were born in 90, but that doesn't really count. Yeah. It doesn't count. Like, I have a lot of love and respect for Isaiah. I've talked to him a few times, like, back and forth. So maybe that's where my bias does come from. He's just a really nice guy. And I think he'll forever be in a top 5, GOAT point guard talk, in my opinion.
Oh, I mean, I think right now he's firmly number 3 for me. And it would be hard for anybody to take me off of that cliff. Like I do have a lot of respect for Isaiah Thomas, and I think he was an incredible point guard for his time, and I think he would be even better in today's era. But it's just, man, just Steph Curry is just so incredible, man. Like you're watching one of the greatest, in my opinion, one of the top 10 players of all time in Steph Curry. I just think he's that special as a basketball player. Like he can just do it all. It's incredible, man, from an offensive standpoint. But yeah, I mean, again, I don't knock anybody for having Isaiah Thomas over him. My personal preference is taking Steph Curry. But we can move on to some stats predictions. So I did find the list of who we've talked about. We've talked about Monte, Asar, Ivy, Stewart, Bojan Bergs, Duran, and I'm forgetting who we talked about last week. And I feel so bad for doing that because I know was it Bagley that we talked about or James Wiseman?
I don't even know, dude.
See, nobody knows.
I don't even know what I did yesterday.
That's right. It was Isaiah Livers. I'm looking at the list right now. So let's talk about who I have on the prep sheet.
Okay.
We talked about Joe Harris. And let's just talk about Killian Hayes. Let's predict Killian Hayes stats. We haven't talked about him at all during this podcast, and it doesn't feel like a Pistons Talk podcast without talking about Killian Hayes. So, you want me to start this off with Joe Harris?
Sure.
Okay. I think Joe Harris, oh man, this is going to suck because I feel like, man, I feel like he's going to give us 9 points per game, probably like 2 or 3 rebounds, probably an assist, probably just 2 rebounds. I think he'll get 9 points per game because he's going to play a few more minutes more than he did for the Brooklyn Nets, or maybe right around, but there's going to be more shots available for him. So I'm going to say 9 points, 2 rebounds, an assist. I still think he shoots 43% from the field. I'll say 43% from the 3-point line. He'll shoot 46% from the field. And free throw wise, I think he's going to shoot like, I don't know, 75%. He's not a great free throw shooter for how good he is from the outside, but he doesn't get to the line that much either. But 9-2-1 with 45, 46, 43% from 3 and 75% from the line for Joe Harris.
Yeah, this is a tough one with Joe Harris, kind of trying to predict his stats, because I don't really know, and I haven't seen a preseason game yet because we're still, another month away from that. If the guy's healthy, if he's recovered from his injury, and what position he's going to be playing, because arguably, if you look at Joe Harris as a player, he could play shooting guard, he can play small forward, and he could play power forward.
Yeah.
Now, I was thinking about rotations, and I think when you look at the team in the second unit structurally, it makes more sense to play him at the power forward position next to Asar Thompson. I think if that's the position he's going to be playing, and he's out there with, Monte Morris, Alec Burks, and Asar, and whether it's Bagley or Wiseman, I think he's going to probably put up around 9 points. I think that's what you said as well.
Yeah.
I'll probably give him, a rebound or 2 a game. I don't think he's really going to be assisting a lot. I think he's just going to be out there just to shoot the basketball. So I don't even think he'll probably average a full assist a game.
Okay.
But I do think he's going to shoot, good from the outside. I don't know if he's going to, keep shooting 40% from the outside, because I don't know how serious that, that injury is. So I'll say he'll shoot 37% from 3, 75 from the line, and maybe, I don't know, 48 from the field.
Okay, 48 is good. That's his career average. He is a career 44% 3-point shooter, though. So, man, knocking him down to 37. Oof.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously, I have talked to some people that are Brooklyn Nets fans, and they didn't have a lot of good things to say about Joe Harris, but especially with the playoffs, I think they kind of had a sour taste in their mouth. But I just don't know where they're going to put him at, man. I really don't. Like, I just told you, like, what I think a second unit with him could look like. I didn't even mention Isaiah Livers in that.
Yeah.
Because I think Isaiah Livers projects more as a power forward off the bench.
He did have a terrible, I'm looking at the playoff numbers right now.
Yeah.
Crap, I've never seen these. 2 points per game.
Yeah.
And that's rounding up. 15% from the field. He only played 11 minutes per game. Now, to be fair, he only took 3 shots. But the 3-point percentage, it was 0.083, according to Basketball Reference, but 100% from the free throw line. But, I mean, damn, Joe. Damn, that is bad in the playoffs. It was only 4 games, so who knows? He could have found his shot at some point, but wow. I had no idea. Those are terrible numbers. Wow. I feel like walking everything back now.
You feel like what?
I feel like walking everything I said about him back.
Yeah, he had a really bad playoffs. People are saying he was going through an injury. Like, I just don't know. It just, you don't trade for a guy, even though he's in the last year of his contract, unless you think he can bounce back and the shooting can be close to 40% from 3. You don't help the Brooklyn Nets out to re-sign Cam Johnson when that was a primary target for you all offseason.
Unless you think like Cam Johnson is only going to play like 40-something games per year. Like, yeah, let him sign him to a long-term contract. He ain't going to live up to it. I don't know. That's some darkness right there. Let me just be very fair to myself. Like that's some dirty talk. But I don't know what the injury was with Joe Harris though, because he did play 74 games last year, and I don't know how bad the injury was when you play that many games. And he was still getting 20 minutes per game, and I feel like 20 was kind of low just because they traded for Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. I do believe he was hurt at the beginning of the year though.
Yeah, I don't remember what he injured or the severity of it, but like I said, I just don't know where they're gonna slot him at, because it's like, oh, they could play him small forward. I was like, well, then Asar not getting any playing time, and he's too good of a player not to get playing time, right?
Yeah.
They're not gonna put him at shooting guard over Alec Burks, because I think both of us can agree that Alec Burks offers more at the shooting guard position than Joe Harris could, because Alec Burks can get to the line at will. He can just create fouls. He can get to the line. Great 3-point shooter as well. So I was just like, the only way he plays is if you play him at power forward, really. I mean, you're not going to put him at shooting guard or small forward because you want to Sarr and Burks in those slots in the second unit.
Yeah, I don't know. I always think like I've said multiple times on this podcast, I think he's going to play primarily the 4 for the Pistons. That's what I think. And I still think they're going to play him, especially at the beginning of the season, because you did trade for him and it's $20 million a year that you're giving him, even though it is on a 1-year deal. You don't trade for him, like you were saying, just so they could re-sign Cam Johnson. But I don't know. But what about Killian Hayes? What do you think his stats will be for this year?
Killian's stats. This is a hard one. I don't know if Killian's going to be playing a whole lot. I know there's a video this week of him just raining like 15 corner threes.
That was nice to see. That was nice.
Yeah. But I think probably like if he's a third string point guard, like probably 3 points a game, dude. Like I don't know where you slot him at. I don't know if you're gonna give him more minutes than Monte Morris, which I highly doubt. Like, you don't trade for a veteran point guard like that is really efficient. So probably like 3 points, maybe like 4.5 assists. And I don't even want to get into the shooting splits because I don't know if he's going to get the playing time. I just don't. I don't know if he has a future with this team, personally.
So I've been thinking about this for a while. I'll say I'm with you. I think it's 3 points per game. I don't think he gets the playing time. I think the confidence is pretty much shot. It was nice to see him shoot the corner 3. His jump shot looked the same on every attempt too. Like the other video I was talking about with him doing some moves off the dribble, his shot looked different on every clip. Like, between his legs, like sometimes they were kicking out, sometimes they were straight, sometimes he was fading, sometimes the elbow was tucked, sometimes it was wide. Like it just was, I don't know. His shot looked weird to me. So I'll say 3 points. I'm going to say 2 rebounds. I'm going to say 3 assists because I don't think he's going to get the playing time. I still think he gets a steal a game. And then shooting wise, I'm going to say he shoots 36% from the field, 26% from 3, and around 80% from the free throw line because he's surprisingly a really good free throw shooter for his career.
No, he is. I did want to actually react to a comment from Truth Over Emotions. And we haven't talked about this, but he said, I think the X factor are the 2 backup point guards. I think there could be a lineup where you put Monte Morris as your point guard and you put Marcus Sasser in it shooting guard.
I've talked about that before. Yeah. That'd be a fun lineup. I just don't think we'll see that backcourt at the beginning of the season, though. I think that's something. I think it's Alec Burks' backup position to lose. Like I'm high on Marcus Sasser. We talked about that at the beginning of the podcast. I think his role is eventually 6-man with this team, and I would love to see a backcourt of Monte Morris and Marcus Sasser. And I do think we'll see that at some point in this year. I think it happens after All-Star break. But yeah, I'm with Truth Over Emotions. That's going to be a hell of a backcourt once we get to see it.
Yeah, I mean, like, could Killian play next to Morris? Maybe. I don't know. I really don't. I'm not going to sit up here and pretend that I know what Monty's lineups are going to be. I really don't. But what I will say is, if the Pistons just want to keep Killian as kind of like that emergency point guard in case someone gets injured, he's right there. He knows the offense. He can give you 10 and 6. That's what he did this past season. And I think he's more than capable of running an NBA offense. I think he's a smart basketball player. It's just his confidence isn't really high right now.
Yeah, I think I've said this so many times on the podcast. I think with the guards they have on this team right now, the next move would be for him is to really try to find a role off the ball, making cuts to the basket, playing really strong defense and being that secondary playmaker in the offense. You make a cut, someone passes it to you, and you make a quick decision to either get rid of it or take a shot up. I just don't really see him making a career in the NBA as a point guard anymore. I just think there's just not much to him offensively. Like, I mean, maybe he could have some weird resurgence like Chris Dunn has the past 2 seasons. He had a great 22 games for the Utah Jazz. And, he was not much of an offensive player when he was drafted. And I think he was drafted like 5th in his NBA draft, as he was a 22-year-old point guard coming out of Providence, or 21, somewhere around there. But there is still a chance where Killian could make something of an NBA career. I just think right now his best bet would be off the ball as a player. And
yeah.
I think when we saw that clip, you posted it, of him shooting from the corner threes, that was him really starting to take that step as like, okay, I'm really gonna have to learn to be a catch and shoot player, because with Cade, Ivy, Asar, Burks, and Morris on the floor, they're not gonna ask me to run point guard. That's too many damn good ball handlers and good decision makers on the floor. They're not going to ask me to run the offense with those guys on the floor. And he's not going to be playing, if he does get on the floor, he's not going to be playing without any of those guys with him. They will be running the show over Killian Hayes, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know, man. I don't want to make this podcast like a Killian Hayes, because we're not hating on him. I don't really want to focus on it. There are some really good Q&As, and Cameron said he sent you a few, but he's not going to go first, because there were people that had asked first, and I like to keep this Q&A, first come, first serve. Not if Lance gets a DM from a fan or from a follower, but we will answer your questions, Cameron. But I want to get to Derek first, because Derek actually asked this 10 minutes within the podcast. So shout out to him. So are you concerned about, when all of our rookie deals are up, that we're going to have enough money to sign Cade, Ivy, Duren, and hopefully Asar?
I've already kind of put myself in a mindset where, like, we're not going to have all these guys for the entirety of their careers. I think there's going to be some very tough decisions in the next few years. And I think one of the reasons you stockpile so many talented young guys on a team is to eventually flip a couple of them for another big time player to put your team over the top. And I think that's something Troy Weaver will eventually do. I mean, I think Cade is as untouchable as you can possibly get on this team. But for the other young guys, it's just their futures are still up in the air. I think they're going to be Pistons for a while, but that is something that, like, if I do allow it to concern me, it is something like that kind of gets me disappointed that we probably won't see all 4 of those guys on the team together for a decade, unless some guys are willing to take pay cuts, because That's probably what it would take for them all to be on this team.
So when I was looking at our cap space over the last couple of years and the way Troy Weaver's kind of maneuvered it, like the Pistons going into next summer around 38 million.
Yeah.
Cade's rookie extension is going to be coming up, and I think it'll be similar to what Tyrese Halliburton signed for. I
Okay.
really do. I think it's going to be in that ballpark. To Derek's question, am I concerned? Yes, I'm always concerned. Because when you have rookie deals and you have players like that, I think Cade is probably going to be the most expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know what Asar is going to turn into. If he turns into like a two-way stud, maybe he's in the same ballpark as Cade Cunningham. We'd have to wait and see. I think Duran, if he reaches his ceiling and he becomes a two-way player, you're probably looking in the 100 millions. You really are. I don't think he's going to command as much as like a Cade Cunningham would. And similar with Ivy, I think he could be in the 100 millions as well. But that is something that we'd probably have to worry about a few years down the line. I think Cade Cunningham will be the first Piston to get that rookie contract extension. But I always worry stuff about that. Like when I look at cap space and I look at, we're, signing players for, giving them like, $13 million contracts and stuff like that. But it's something that we could probably worry about in a few years, I guess.
I mean, I'm looking at Bam Adebayo's contract, 5 years, 160 million, and you're like, damn, Jalen Duren probably could get that. And I mean, I'm happy for him to get it, but like, I think again, in order to keep all of these guys, someone would have to take a pay cut, or even someone like Asar, where we probably don't get to see the full offensive repertoire from him. Like he'll probably be more like, I'm thinking like he could potentially be just like an Andre Iguodala type where you're like, he could give you more, but he sacrifices his individual game for the team, where because of that, he'll probably get a nice payday, but he probably won't get as nice of a payday. I mean, that's a possibility, but who knows? It's too early to tell, but I definitely think at some point we're going to have to pull out a tissue, wipe the tears away, because some of these guys will be playing for other teams.
Or you just pull a Golden State.
Yeah.
And you just pay to keep them, and you're in luxury cap space hell. That was the one team I was thinking. I was like, man, who's a team that just did not let their core like walk at all? And it's Golden State. I mean, you look at Curry's contract, you look at Klay Thompson's contract. Draymond just got a new contract. The Pistons could do that, and plus you have to remember the CBA is going to be going up, over the next couple of years. So that's just something that we're going to have to revisit. If me and you are still doing this podcast, who knows? in like 3 or 4 years, but hey, you never know.
I hope we are, just for this question. We'll keep it going just to see how this question turns out. But that's why you sign someone like Isaiah Stewart early. Like, some people don't like the contract, but it's going to be like less than 10% in a couple of seasons than the total salary cap, and you're still getting a serviceable player for pretty cheap at that. And when time comes to be talking about that,
for sure. I know Michael made a really good point. He said you guys need to consider some contract kickers if they make an all-star game or all NBA teams. Yeah, contract kickers are. I remember, like when I was a little bit younger and I was looking at Blake Griffin's contract kicker, like just to trade him, you'd have to pay him like $200,000, which I didn't know what a contract kicker was. I'll be completely transparent and honest with you guys. I'm like, what the hell is a contract kicker? I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something I didn't specifically think of contract kickers, but like, when I look at the roster, I'm thinking like, yeah, Cade will probably be an all-star. Jaden Ivey, he'll probably be an all-star, like for sure once or twice in his career, and then Duren, he'll probably flirt with it. But Asar, he may look like an all-star talent, but I don't know if he'll ever make one. And then all NBA teams, yeah, I think Cade's probably really the only one you can sit there and look and be like, yeah, he's definitely going to be making an all NBA team at some point in his career. Like, and it's no offense to the other young guys. It's just there's a lot of good basketball players in the NBA. And as we talked about earlier on this podcast, Cade was the only one that was talked about being as a top 10 player in the next 5 years.
Yeah. So Bravo said they're called trade kickers, not contract kickers. Okay, I'm an asshole, an idiot. I knew it was something. So it's a trade kicker. So if you trade them, so like it's 10 to 15% of their contract. So if you do trade them, you have to pay them that money. But I'm an idiot, man. I'm tired. It's Sunday. I've been working all week. I don't even know how I'm doing a podcast in 2 hours sleep, but we're here. Does Cameron have any questions? Since I know I have seen him a little bit.
I don't know if you're going to want to talk about it, though, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a little off topic. Do you want me to ask you?
Go for it.
It has nothing to do with the Pistons.
That's fine.
But are you a Michigan State fan?
Is it about Mel Tucker?
It is.
I'm not touching anything Mel Tucker right now. You guys can make the jokes in the comment section if you want. I don't feel comfortable answering questions about something that I know nothing about.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. I've seen the articles. I've seen the memes. I've seen it all. I just don't feel comfortable answering stuff like that.
Real quick though, was he officially? Well, he was just suspended, right? He wasn't fired yet because I've seen.
They fired him today. Yeah,
they did actually fire him. Okay, because when I actually typed that in, I still just saw suspensions. But wow, that's crazy! Hell of an error to end so quickly. I've been getting a lot of messages about it though from my friends. They've been texting me all night, and I'm not a Michigan State fan, but like. It's just it ends with a lot of laughter from some of the comments. I will not say any of them, but
yeah, I mean we're getting those comments in the comment section, and I'm not gonna put them on the screen because it's I don't want to touch that. So this comes from Brian, and I know we've talked about like stat predictions, but since Brian is a longtime listener of this podcast, he wants to know what do you think Cade's stats are going to be this upcoming season?
I'll say it like I've said it the few times we have talked about this 24/7 and I could see those numbers climb. I mean, I could easily see him average like 26, 8 and 8, but I'm gonna say 24/7 will be his stats for this upcoming year because there's a lot of mouths to feed too. Jaden Ivey, I think, is going to 20-point scorer. Jalen Duren's going to take another step offensively. Bojan's still going to let that thing fly. Burks, Morris, Asar. It's a much better roster than it was last year, but 24/7 for me.
I think I'm going to go 22, 7, and 9.5. I think his assists are going to go up a lot just because there's just so much there for him. I mean, you got Bojan, you're going to have Jaden Ivey, you're going to get to play with Duren. I think that there's going to be a lot of assists left on the table for Cade Cunningham. I really do. Would not surprise me if we see him have, 10, 11, 12 assist games this year just because there's just so many offensive weapons he can pass to.
That'd be cool to see 10 assists per game. Not going to lie. That would be freaking awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think it's possible. I really do. But like I said, the Mel Tucker stuff, it's just, I thought it was like a joke at first because I had to check it. I thought it was like some like butt crack sports stuff. I was like, no way. Like I said, I don't know.
Don't be bringing now, man.
I just don't feel comfortable talking about something I know nothing about. But this comes from Red Bear in Arcade. He wants to know what Rico Hines runs and who all goes.
I mean, it's just an open gym. Basically an open gym where I don't know what Rico or the guy that runs it. I'm not sure. I don't think he's associated with the NBA. I know he obviously has some contacts, but it's an open gym for NBA players, high-level college players, and I feel like some high-level high school players attend and play these things. They go to 7 on their runs. Every shot is worth 1, even 3-pointers. And they do play with like a short shot clock. I think it's less than 24 seconds. And it's you have to, after, even when you get to 7 points, you have to actually make a free throw to end the game, which I think is pretty cool. But it's basically just an open run for NBA players. And he talks about it at the beginning of the video, at least the first part, where it's an opportunity for you to build chemistry with your team and to work on stuff that you're going to carry in with you to the next season.
Yeah, so what I'll say, like what exactly these runs are they're open pickup games for NBA players, college players, and high school players if they do want to play there. Rico Hines is an assistant coach for the 76ers.
Okay, I did not know
So
that.
he's a coach for the 76ers right now. I think he was with the Raptors a few years ago too. So he's getting into assistant coaching, which I love these runs personally. Just like an NBA junkie, an NBA fan, I love watching. Just NBA pickup games in the summer when there's no basketball on. But what Lance said, yeah, like every point is worth 1 point, whether it's a layup, whether it's a half court shot, it's worth 1 point, and you have to end the game by shooting a free throw. That's basically what the runs are. They're just open runs just to get some NBA work in, which I think it's really cool that he's built such a strong community among NBA players, because like he's an assistant coach for the 76ers. He doesn't have to do that for all of the NBA teams. He could say like, no, I only want my 76er players here, but I think he's just a really nice, genuine person, and he just likes to see other people succeed.
Yeah, from his resume, real quick for everybody that's interested in it. From 2006 to 2010, he was the Golden State Warriors assistant. From 2010 to 2015, he was on St. John's bench. From 2016 to 2019, he was the Reno Bighorn Stockton Kings assistant. 2020 to 22, Sacramento Kings assistant player development. Then 22 to 23, Toronto Raptors. Then this upcoming season, he'll be on the 76ers bench as an assistant coach.
Yeah, like I said, if you're not really familiar with him, because be like guys on Twitter be like, what the hell's a Rico Hines? It's kind of like old, because I always forget we have a lot of like older generation fans, like that are like in their 40s and 50s, and like, what the hell is this? I've never heard of it, but I think it's cool.
His time as a basketball player did overlap with Baron Davis's career at UCLA, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. That's probably why he loves Russell Westbrook and Kevin Love so much.
I mean, that's why you always see Baron Davis out there too. He's always in at the beginning of the videos too. They're just cool open runs for NBA players. It's like almost a mini all-star game on every court. It's pretty cool.
That's the question from Bravo, and I already know my answer, but I'm not really sure how you would answer this one. Should the Pistons consider signing a free agent like Rondé Hollis Jefferson? Loves his performance in the World Cup.
I mean, it would be. I was thinking about that the other day too, not specifically for the Pistons, but he took on such a great scoring role for what team did he play for again? Man, I'm blanking on the name.
I don't know. I didn't watch any World Cup, honestly.
Why do I think the Bahamas? I don't know why I'm thinking the Bahamas or Japan or something. I don't know. But yeah, he looked great as a lefty. But I don't know if that's his role in the NBA. I always thought when he came into the NBA, he was more of a defensive player. So I think he'll get a shot with an NBA roster. I just don't think you will see the same player we saw at the World Cup in the NBA.
Yeah, I saw so when I was scrolling, I was like, man, who is that? Because it was like a highlight mixtape, and they were doing like a side-by-side of Rondé Hollis Jefferson and Kobe Bryant. And I was like, oh, it must be one of those international players that I've never heard of. And, he just has a similar like highlight package of Kobe Bryant. And then I look at the name. I was like, oh, I remember him. He used to play on the Nets.
Yep.
I was like, to answer your question, Bravo, should the Pistons consider it? They don't have any cap space, brother. They really don't, man. Like they'd have to trade someone to even make room for a player like that. I think he could fit, but I just don't know where the money would come, how it would be possible with our cap space being so tied up with everyone that we have in the roster.
Man, this is gonna bug me for not knowing what team it is because there's one jersey where it says Japan, but I don't think it was.
I think it was the Bahamas or something like that. I'm not 100% sure though.
Dude, this is gonna bug me so much.
Like I said, we really shouldn't care what team you played on.
No, you don't understand. This is just gonna eat at me all night, and I will not unless I see it. In every jersey, every picture, and every video is just his jersey is covered. Someone tell me, please. Someone tell me before I drive myself crazy. He did wear number 24 for Kobe. I thought he should wear number 25.
Yeah, that's why everyone's like, "Oh, he looks like Kobe out there," and everyone's just like, "Dude, why is he acting like he's Kobe Bryant?" But I don't know, man.
Man, I hate when people say that. Let him go do his thing for the World Cup. Man, don't be hating on Rondé Hollis Jefferson. I do think this is the guy that Kevin Durant really wanted Oklahoma City to draft at the time. They're like, hey, he's going to be a big time ball player, but now he plays overseas.
Yeah. I'm going to get to Alan's question. Because it is a trade question. He's like, who do you see as a potential trade that could happen before the first game of the season? I got a player in mind.
I could see Marvin Bagley being traded before the beginning of the season. I feel like there's a lot of rumblings about that. Who's your player, though?
I think Dallas revisits Killian.
That's a good one.
And I think Bojan may be involved in it. I don't know why.
We did see a report earlier from that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, from I want to say Tim McMahon, who, covers the, like, if there's Dallas Maverick news and it comes from him, it's legitimate. Maybe Dallas likes Killian enough to, part ways with one of their players. Maybe you get JJ Hardy back in a deal. I doubt it. I really do. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like Killian to me would be the easy answer, but I know you did say Marvin Bagley, which wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, real quick. Rondé Hollis Jefferson played for Jordan.
Oh, okay.
And I kept reading that online. I'm like, why is the Jordan brand sponsoring a country? This is crazy. Like, that's what I thought it was. I'm so stupid. But yeah, Killian Hayes is a good name. I got to look at the Dallas Mavericks roster to see who we just got that great question about young guys and how we're going to sign all of them. I really don't want a super young player being traded, getting back into trade. You know what I'm saying? Give me like a middle-aged veteran. You know what I'm saying? Like someone like Monte Morris's age.
Yeah, so Alan actually told us Jordan, but I couldn't see him typing in that. So thank you for telling us it was Jordan Allen. But I couldn't see it because I was trying to do something else on the screen. Lance can't see the screen. I can, though, so that's my fault. This is a question from Organic Lindo, and it's another trade question. I know he just got hurt, but do you think we could pry Trey Murphy away from New Orleans?
I would love to. I don't know. I feel like, though, you'd have to be willing to give up like a Jaden Ivey or an Asar Thompson for Trey Murphy, because Cade's out of the question, but I don't see who else on the – I mean, they're not taking Marvin Bagley for Trey Murphy. They want someone that they can potentially build around, someone that's going to be a real ball player for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they would take Asar because they do have Herbert Jones, even though I don't think Herbert Jones and Asar are on the same level, but they're both like defensive-minded guys. I think Asar will be better. I just don't know if I'd be willing to trade Jaden Ivey or Asar for a Trey Murphy, even though I would love them. I mean, if you could give me – if New Orleans said, yeah, we'll take Bojan, Killian, and Marvin Bagley and Trey Murphy's up for grabs, 100% I'd do that. I just don't see a trade like that happening, so I don't want to give up anything for Trey Murphy.
I don't think they would trade him anyways. I think New Orleans is in a really weird situation right now. And what I mean by weird is like they don't know what's going to happen with Zion. They just traded for CJ McCollum. Dyson Daniels is a promising young player. Trey Murphy's going to be out for a couple of months. You still have Brandon Ingram. Like, I feel like they're a playoff team, but only if Zion is there consistently and doesn't get injured. But and I feel like Trey Murphy is a really big contributor to what they do.
Oh, hell yeah. And he shot phenomenally from the field and from the 3-point line last year.
Yeah.
They're not giving him up unless you're giving, again, like one of the young players for him.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you gave him Ivy, they might consider it. But like you're not going to do that if you're the Pistons. But we do actually have a question that does involve Ivy. This can be the last question of the podcast, so we've almost been on for 2 hours. So, do we pull a Tyrese Halliburton type of trade with Ivy?
Man, I do feel like out of the core, he'd probably be the guy most likely to go. Just because I feel like Cade and Asar could make up for his absence, but I don't see it happening in his second year unless Ivy, like I talked about this on the podcast a couple of episodes ago, where unless Ivy tries to play like too much hero ball and tries to be the guy and like takes away from the offense, if that type of thing happened, I could see a Tyrese Halliburton type trade happening for the Pistons, but I don't think Ivy will do that. I think he will ultimately play within the team, but he is also the guy that I worry about the most, because I do feel like he very much wants to be the guy, and there'll be moments where he, like when he was getting locked up, I shouldn't say locked up, but when that little point guard, the 5'8" dude from Kansas State, the Toronto Raptors, I think he was second round draft. You know what I'm talking about, that Noel guy, I think, or Hal, I don't remember. How he kind of like put the clamps on him, and Cade was standing like on the outside, like, "Hey, bud, I'm open. Pass me the ball." And Ivy just tried to do too much, and yeah, got it stripped. I could see that. That's what worries me. I could see that happening. And then again, I think Ivy could be traded like Tyrese Halliburton was.
So, for context, for people that don't remember, the Kings weren't a playoff team. They were like on a cusp of a play-in. But the Pacers, obviously, it seems like for years, they always wanted to move Miles Turner or Sabonis, right?
Yeah.
You heard it in trade rumors for like 2, 3, 4 years, it seemed like. And a player like Sabonis, in my opinion, I think he's a top 15 player in the NBA. I think he's one of the better power forwards in the NBA too. They got a all-star level talent for a player that will probably become a multi-time all-star. They basically traded a proven star for a guy that has the potential to become a star player, and I think Halliburton will be that. Now, to Ben's question, could we pull a Tyrese Halliburton type of trade with Ivy? When I look at it and I look at the NBA landscape of, teams that maybe have stars that aren't happy, I just can't see one right now. I think there are teams that would love a Jaden Ivey, but I don't really think the Pistons would trade him unless they believe that it can't work with him and Cade Cunningham. And that's the hill I'll die on. I think they want to see what they have with this young core before they make any, major changes, because I think those two in the backcourt are going to work together. I really do. I think that having those two in the backcourt is probably going to be the next great Detroit Pistons backcourt, in my personal opinion. I think Cade can play off ball. Ivy can play off ball. Cade can score when he wants. Ivy can score when he wants. I just don't think they're going to pull a trigger if, said star becomes available. Like, they're not going to do it for, like, a Karl Anthony Towns when you already have, like 50 bigs, right? They're not going to do it for, that's the only, star I could think that would maybe want out of right now. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in LA. I know someone said Paul George. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I mean, you're going to have to give up a hell of a lot more than just Jaden Ivey if you want Paul George.
Okay, but if like Devin Booker became available, like they were like, it's just not working for some reason with Bradley Beal. We're going to put him up on the trade block. And then you never know with Matt Ishbia. You just never know. If they put Devin Booker on the board, you could probably see it. Like that, I think that's like, I don't know. I'm not really saying like Devin Booker and Sabonis are comparable, but like Sabonis was already an all-star and Tyrese Halliburton was only averaging 15 a game playing off the ball from De'Aaron Fox. And then he blew up to averaging 20 and 10 this past season, becoming an all-star. You know, yeah, I mean, go on.
I just think, like to your point, I think Devin Booker is way above Sabonis. And I think you could agree with that. I'm just talking about, like, to Ben's point, like, Sabonis was like he was like a fringe, like, star, but he was an all-star. I don't really think there's like a player right now out there that you trade Jaden Ivey for, and the Pistons are like instantly a playoff team. I just don't think there's a player out there available that makes this team a playoff team right off the bat. I really don't. Like, I would rather keep him. I think Devin Booker could come here, but like way later in his career. I don't think he's going to be walking away from Phoenix because he could sign for over like $200+ million when his contract does expire.
So Sabonis was a 2-time All-Star by the time he was traded for Tyrese Halliburton. It would be like a guy where, you know, mid-20s, 24, 25, had a couple All-Star appearances. I don't know. But again, I just don't see Ivey being traded unless he takes away from what the team is trying to do. And that is a worry for me. Like if he tries to play too much hero ball.
Yeah, I know I've seen a lot of talk among like fans talking about Karl Anthony Towns, and we've talked about it before. I just don't think if you trade for Karl Anthony Towns, this team automatically is to get out of the first round. I think Karl Anthony Towns, excellent player. One of the better bigs in the NBA. I just question the motor. I question the drive. Like, he seems like a player that, will sign a $200 million contract and is just content with, collecting a check. I haven't really seen that drive from him to, want to get better. Like a Joel Embiid, for example. Like Joel Embiid, when he first got into the league, he's reaching out to like Hakeem Olajuwon, one of the best to ever do it. Like, I haven't really seen that drive or commitment from him to want to get better on the defensive end of the floor or expand his game. Like, he's so talented, extremely talented. But I think if you trade for him, maybe you're a top six seed in the East. Maybe you get out of the first round, but you're not going to trade for Karl Anthony Towns to win a championship. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, he was better as a 5 than a 4. We've gotten into this before, and I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about Anthony Towns on the Pistons. But if he's a 5 man, it's a little bit more interesting because he did put up some great numbers. But I'd agree with you. I think this year, if you traded for Karl Anthony Towns, the Pistons would probably be like a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference, which is, I feel like if you were to keep the core intact, your sights are a little higher than that in the next couple seasons.
Yeah, like, I know Pistons fans are so starving for like that next star. I really do. I understand it. But like, when we traded for Blake Griffin, the Clippers were doing freaking cartwheels when we accepted that trade. Now, Blake had an all-time great season with the Pistons, but we didn't get out of the first round. Now, I know Blake got hurt. I get that. I understand that. But like, you're not trading for a Devin Booker or a Karl Anthony Towns or a Paul George unless you're certain he's the missing piece of the championship. Kind of like how they traded for Rasheed Wallace. Like, they knew they had a great team intact. They knew they just needed that one missing piece. And I don't think the Pistons are there yet. I think they want to see what they have in Cade, Ivey, Asar, and Duren. And once you can assess that and judge and make it get a better understanding of what you actually have, then you go and make those winning moves. I just don't think right now in 2023, they're not there yet. Maybe 2025, 2026, or even 2027, they can make those, gambles and say, we're going to go trade for that star player to get us over the hump. But I just don't think it's there yet.
Yeah, I think when the conversation starts happening about trading one of the young guys, it will be a couple seasons down the line. Not right now.
Yeah, it's just like I said, I think there's going to be a trade with the Pistons where you land that star player. I just don't think it's going to be in 2023. I think it's going to be a lot later. You have a nice young core. Try to build around it before you tank for 3-4 years. You don't want to, trade for a player right now and then you're rebuilding in another 3 to 4 years.
That would suck.
Yeah, I don't know. I know me and you we're pretty, rational, but a lot of Pistons fans they want that Devin Booker. They want that Karl Anthony. They want him now. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Right now. I don't think it happens right away either. But I mean, again, and we can end it after this. I just feel like if Jaden Ivey plays hero ball, takes away from what the Pistons are trying to do, it wouldn't surprise me if they traded him for not an old player, but a guy 24, 25, 26 that's been a multiple time all-star. If they could do that, I think that's a possibility. But I don't see that happening. But again, the hero ball thing does worry me a little bit about Jaden Ivey.
I think he'll be fine. I think Monty will nip that very quickly.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of veterans on this coaching staff that will talk with him and tell him, hey, you don't need to do that. You have Bojan in the corner. You have Cade Cunningham. You have Jalen Duren. I don't think he's going to have to go into that hero ball stuff that we were so accustomed to last year and even a little bit of Rico Hines. I think once he watches more film and breaks it down, he'll learn, because he's the one player probably in the last 10 years that I've seen the Pistons draft. That kid works his ass off.
He does.
He's out there 2 hours before each game, working with trainers, working with development coaches. If I had to bank on one player just to become a multi-time all-star, it's Jaden Ivey, because I know he's going to put in the work. Because I know he's just one of those guys that wants to get better each and every day. And I think he's one of those guys that it's a feel-good story, right? We drafted him at 5 where, some people thought he shouldn't have been a top 5 pick. I think trading, I can see why some Pistons fans are saying, he's a weak link, trade him. He's a ball hog, all that stuff. I understand it, but I think you have to be more patient with him, because I think there's so much potential there with him where he could just skyrocket. And maybe you have a young Ja Morant. You never know. Maybe you have a guy that can get to the basket at will. Maybe you have a guy that could flirt with, 25 points a game next to Cade Cunningham.
I'm excited to see what they can do in the backcourt.
Yeah.
And I've been waiting for it, and I think it's going to be really special. I'm with you. I think they have the potential to be one of the great backcourts in Pistons history. It's going to be amazing to watch them develop as players, man. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, it's a tall backcourt too, 6'5" and 6'6". Yeah. Like I said, we just have to be more patient as Pistons fans, and know you guys want to win. We want to win too. We don't want to be doing a podcast all year, and it's December and the Pistons have 8 wins. We don't want to be there. But we did it all last year. Trust me, me and Lance were on suicide watch over here. But I do appreciate you guys being on this podcast for over 2 hours with us. We're at 2 hours and almost 9 minutes right now, which is, I think, our longest podcast ever.
Man, we keep beating the record every week. It's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't see any other Pistons podcast doing that, but hey. I want you to tell the people that are watching where they can find the podcast and where they can support it and give us a 5-star rating.
Before I do that, please follow me on Twitter at Lance Caparosi. You can do it on Threads as well. Follow my man Anthony at Pistons Talk if you don't already, across all social media platforms. But thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace.